to remake. Let's think about every snack you've eaten this week. Chips, candy, chocolates, or granola bars. Now, how many plastic wrappers did you throw away? I don't know about you, but mine is quite a lot. It's something we do without even thinking, but all those tiny wrappers add up to a massive waste problem. Let me tell you this, 90% of plastic packaging isn't recycled. It just sits in landfills, or worse, which could be in our oceans. 50% of all plastic waste comes from packaging. That means half of our plastic problem could be solved if we rethought packaging. 141 million tons of plastic packaging are wasted every year. That's more than the weight of 700,000 blue whales. Imagine unwrapping a treat and savoring the wrapper as part of the experience. Packaging today is designed for protection and branding, only to be discarded. Yet, it holds untapped potential to engage our senses. Taste, touch, and smell. While promoting sustainability, since we know the best way to zero waste is to digest with us, human body. Sounds futuristic, but it's possible. So, what's stopping us? Here's where things get tricky. Consumer hesitation. First, people wonder, is it safe? Does it taste weird? And second one is the industry barrier. Big companies don't want to change what's working. And the third one is opportunity. We can make edible packaging normal, but we have to tackle these issues first. So I interviewed Stephanie, who graduated from ArtCenter. She was an art director at Chase Design, and she specialized in packaging design and brand strategy. I start off the interview by asking her, what are the existing edible packagings does she know?
I have talked to, not necessarily worked with, a company that was making edible spoons. So I used to work a lot with Nicks in ice cream. So we were looking to partner with somebody so that we weren't using so many plastic spoons for sampling. So we did meet a company that was making these spoons that were made out of like rice and wheat mixture. They kind of look like just a really hard cracker. And so that they were making edible products with the goal of like less plastic in the ocean. And so I have not personally worked on one. I would imagine there to be challenges around food safety with edible packaging in terms of preserving the food, having sort of wax liners, protecting the food from dirt or whatever in the environment, because you probably don't want to eat that on your packaging. And then potentially challenges with consumer perception of like eating seaweed with whatever it's wrapped around as well. So not a ton of depth of knowledge or experience specifically with edible packaging, but peripherally.
Have you tried the spoon before?
I have tried the spoon before. It was super hard because it's going in your mouth and you probably want to use it a few times so it can't disintegrate super quickly when it hits liquid or anything wet. It was very hard crackers. It didn't really taste like anything at all, which is good. I guess it's like you don't really want it to add to the flavor of the ice cream or anything, but it was just like eating something really hard.
Then we talked about how people can feel weird about it. It looks like plastic, but you can eat it. That's hard for some people to accept. So how can we shift the mindset?
I think it's not a super foreign idea. I think that it can be integrated into some of the foods that we eat today. So I think it really depends on what the packaging is made out of and what it's packaging. So if it's made out of seaweed, you probably want to put it around something that's more savory, like a cracker or chips. just because of that perception of what seaweed tastes like. If it's rice paper or it's like more neutral, you could probably put it with sweeter things like cookies, baked goods, or candies, because that taste isn't gonna like totally screw up your perception of the thing you're actually buying. So I think what it's made out of is really gonna matter in the application.
She also shared her thoughts on the best materials, what works, what's safe, and what people are more open to trying.
So probably just seaweed and rice. I think there's anything else I've seen, like I've seen more plant byproducts, not necessarily edible, but made out of plants. I think of any other materials that I've heard of recently in terms of edible things. I think the spoon had some wheat flour in it as well, but as a standalone single ingredient, I don't know of any other ones. So you could probably mix a couple things together to make it a little bit more durable or strong.
Based on her insights, I explore on some of the edible packaging materials. Let's take a look at the materials that are already being used or explored for edible packaging. The first one is seaweed, particularly brown seaweed. It is a renewable resource used to create edible films and coatings. Next is the rice paper. It is thin, light, and already used in food like spring rolls and candies. It dissolves quickly in your mouth and is easy to shape into wrappers for dry snacks. Then, we have dissolvable films made from plants, like starch or cellulose. These are already used in things like instant coffee pods or detergent packs. They dissolve in water, making them perfect for single-use items, especially when you want the wrapper to disappear completely. And finally, there's agar, a jelly-like material made from seaweed. It's super versatile, you can mold it into sheets or shapes, and it holds its form well. I used it in my own experiment, which I will show later in the video. The agar-based packaging can create soft, flexible wrapper that's totally edible. Each of these materials has different textures, strengths, and use cases, and they all help move us closer to zero-waste packaging. Now, another question came into my mind. Are companies interested? Maybe. A few brands are experimenting, but it's still seen as a novelty.
I think right now it's more of a concept than a reality. I think it's, I personally don't know of any companies who are heavily pursuing finding edible packaging solution. I think it's worth exploring for sure. I do see it being very resource intensive. So I think it would cost a lot of money to continue doing this research. And then it would cost a lot to develop the manufacturing capabilities of it. Not to say that it can't be done, but somebody would have to be really dedicated to solving this problem and kind of see the business upside to investing so much in developing an edible packaging solution.
If we want edible packaging to grow, we need both better designs and better storytelling. I continue to ask Stephanie which product types are the most realistic starting points for edible packaging.
Definitely the food industry. I feel like it would be strange to like eat packaging for like your pillowcase or something like that. So I think it definitely has to be in the food industry. And I think it would definitely be more shelf stable pantry goods. I imagine that putting things in the fridge or in the freezer and exposing these packages to moisture is probably problematic. So it probably have to be something that is a packaged good, middle, something in the middle of the grocery store. So yeah, just something you would find in your pantry or cabinet.
Not everything should be edible, but things like snacks, candy, or single-use portions are perfect for this. We can start small and scale up. Last but not least, I asked her what's her vision for edible packaging in the future.
I think that it's not soon, but I also don't think it's that long away. I think that there's definitely interest in it and there's a need for it. And if we can get around the technical difficulties of like shipping, transporting, and keeping it clean, and get over the barriers of customer perception of like what it's going to taste like and how it's going to affect whatever it's wrapping, I think those are the two biggest hurdles for it to grow. I think that there's probably some work that has to be done in terms of how things are sold. Because right now, like this thing wrapped in seaweed packaging sitting on the shelf, anybody can come touch it. And so you probably don't want to eat that. So there probably has to be some thought into how it actually gets sold to a customer.
In 5 or 10 years, I hope edible packaging won't feel strange. It will just feel smart. We'll see it in stores, on shelves, and maybe in fast food. We just need to design for that future now. And now, here's a little experiment I tried, making an edible package using agar. The idea behind this edible plastic is actually quite simple. First, we gel water using agar. Then this gel is dehydrated to create an edible plastic-like sheet that can be used for a variety of purposes. Let's take a look. Let's go get the ingredients first. It was a little tricky to find agar powder at first, but I finally found it at an Asian market. I started by measuring out the ingredients. 1 teaspoon of agar and 200 grams of water. Then mix the water and agar in a pot. Bring it to boil and let it boil for 30 seconds. Take the pot off the heat and let the bubbles escape. Skim off any foam from the top. Let the liquid cool till it stops steaming. This will make it easier to coat the parchment paper evenly. Pour the liquid onto a baking sheet with parchment paper and quickly tilt it to distribute the liquid in an even thin layer. Set the baking sheet aside and let the plastic dry. So that was my agar experiment. It's a small step, but it shows that edible packaging can actually be made at home and opens the door to bigger ideas. And this is what the final result looks like. This one's from the internet since mine is still drying. Once it's ready, you just peel the film off the parchment paper and cut it to any size you need. I know edible packaging sounds a little bit weird at first. Like, you're supposed to eat the wrapper, but it's not plastic. It's made from natural things we already eat, like seaweed or rice. It's safe, clean, and can even taste good. The key is to design it in a way that feels familiar, so it doesn't look scary, but more like something you find in your lunchbox. Like we talked about earlier, getting people to accept edible packaging can be tricky, but it's totally doable. There are 3 steps. 1. Make it look like food, not plastic. Use textures, colors, and shapes that remind people of familiar foods like rice paper or fruit skins, and avoid overly plastic-looking surfaces, because it can trigger doubts. 2. Let them experience it. If possible, let people touch, smell, and taste samples. Seeing someone else try it builds trust. 3. Tell a clear story. People fear what they don't understand. Use simple explanations and visuals to show how it's made and why it's safe. But there's a real challenge we have to talk about, like Stephanie mentioned. Hygiene. What happens if someone touches the packaging before we eat it? That's a huge concern. We need creative solutions like protective edible layers or wrappers within wrappers, like fruit skins. This isn't a perfect fix yet, but it's a starting point. If the biggest problem with edible packaging is contamination, how would you fix it? I'd love to see your ideas. Post your thoughts or sketches using #repack and let's rethink packaging together. Thank you for watching.